Good morning, class. I'm glad to see you all here today. Today we're going to start our lesson out by learning about comparing. Now before we do that, I have a question I want to ask you. I'm going to ask you all, how did you get to school today? Yes? Well, here's some pictures of some ideas of how you could get to school. Maybe taking the bus, maybe you rode your bike, or how about your parents, one of your parents drove you in your new car? Yeah? Well, Jimmy, how did you get to school today? You rode the bus? Awesome. Clara, your mom drove you? Well, that brings me to my next question. How do you think your parents got to school? Do you think they had cars? Or maybe they rode their bike to school? Yeah? Your dad took the bus, Jim? Well, that's another question I want to ask you. How do you think your grandparents got to school? Well, how do you think, how old do you think cars are? Yeah? Do you think they had them back then? Well, the first car was made in 1893. Can anybody think of how old that is? That's over 100 years old. A man named Henry Ford and William Durant both made the first car in 1893. And I have a picture of one that I want to share with you because I thought that picture was really cool. And this is what that car looks like back in 1893. Now, if you look at that car, does it look like what we drive today? No, it doesn't, does it? It is completely different. Well, maybe not completely. There are some similarities, things that are the same. So what are some things that are the same in this picture that we might compare with our cars today? You're right, Jimmy, there are 4 wheels on this car. And you know what this thing is right here? That is called the steering wheel. That is all similarities that we have. Maybe has a seat. That's some more similarities that they have that we do also. All right? Well, how do you think they got around before cars were invented? Well, they did have horses and wagons. Yes, that's how they were able to get around. And one another thing that they had was trains. Trains were another big way of transportation back then. Well, before we get too much farther, I'm going to ask you guys to get out your journals, and I want you to open to your definition section. We're going to put a new definition of the word compare, because that's what we're going to be talking about today. So I put on the screen over here the definition of compare, and I'm also going to hold it up here so that you can see it a little bit better. We are going to learn about compare. Now, comparing, the definition of that is to find the similarities or differences between 2 or more people or things. Now, you can't compare just one thing, can you? Because it's by itself. What are you going to compare it to? So, if you have 2 objects, then you can compare them. So that's what this means. To compare is to find the similarities or find how they are alike or find how they are different and compare them. So, does anybody know what a Venn diagram is? That's what we're going to be doing today. We are going to be comparing our transportation from back in the past to the present. And how we're going to do that is we're going to use what we call a Venn diagram. And this is what a Venn diagram looks like. It has 2 circles, and you see that the circles are connected, and there's a little spot in the middle that you can write similarities of things that they are the same. So we're going to do that today in our lesson. We are going to put the past and we are going to put the present. And we're going to use transportation to learn this Venn diagram. So before we do that, I have a short video I'm going to have you watch, and we're going to talk about some of the things that you learned from that video. So we'll go ahead and do that right now. Alright, so now that video is done, I want to discuss with you what are some of the ways that transportation in the past. What are the very first ways that people got around? Yes, Jimmy. Yes, they were able to ride in a horse and wagon. That is correct. Another way, how do you think that people got across the water? Do you think they were always planes? Emma, you're right. They took a big ship, and that's how people way back then. Here's a picture of transportation back. It was not everybody could have a wagon. Not all the areas were able to have roads, so people rode horseback, and they would go through the fields or through the woods where there were no roads. And then as people got better, they were able to make roads, and there were small towns. They would ride wagons from place to place to place. And that's how they would get around. And then eventually we became with stagecoaches and trains, and eventually we got to making the first car. All right, so as a class, our next job that we're going to do is we're going to put together a Venn diagram, and we're going to use all of these things that we just learned about. I'm going to have you open your Google Chromebook, and I want you to go to Unit 8 Resources, and on that there's a little click, a little piece of a picture that you can see of a Venn diagram. I want you to click on that. Yep, go ahead and click on that, and you'll see what I have here on the screen. Go ahead and open that, and up is going to come a Venn diagram, and underneath of it's going to be a whole bunch of pictures. Pictures of a horse and buggy, pictures of cars, pictures of trains and planes, and we are going to create a Venn diagram in this class. So before we do that, we're going to label what we do. So first of all, I want you to type your name in that section where it says name, and we're going to add past and we're going to add present. All right? So we are going to talk about what are some of the things that the past transportation has, and what are some of the things the present has. So let's think about that. Jimmy, what did you say? Yes, we're going to put horse and buggy on the past, because that is one way that the transportation was able to get around. What's another way that the past got around? Yes, they were able to ride their horses. Trains were another way, so why don't you type that in? All right, so how about for today? We are learning about cars. Yes, we have cars, and there's very many different variations of cars. Trucks, small cars, big cars, all right? So before we go too much farther, let's look at this little section that we have in the middle. This section is what we talk about similarities. What do the past and the present have together? So we're going to discuss, what does the past have? Let's look at the wagon. What does the wagon have do we still have wagons today? Who drives wagons with horses? The Amish do. Yes. So there are some people that use horse and buggy or horse and wagons today. How about a bike? Do you still ride a bike? Yes, and I can guarantee you people back then also rode bikes. So that's another thing that we can put here in the middle. So I'm going to have you guys complete that as your group, and as you guys finish that up, we're going to come back and review that when you're done. So go ahead and complete your Venn diagram. All right, so now that we've done that, let's go back and recap some of the things that we discussed today. So before we go on, what was our word that we defined at the beginning of this class? Yes, Emma. Compare. Good job. And compare means what? Finding the similarities or differences between two or more people or things. So, and how did we use this word compare? Yeah, that's right. We created a Venn diagram. And in doing so, we were able to see what they used in the past and how we use things today and what the differences are, right? So, as we are comparing what we did, we were able to do that in our Venn diagram, and I'm so excited to be able to read what you guys put. So, if you are all done, go ahead and close your computer, and we will move on to our next activity.